Hey, what's up, everybody? We made it to Unit 3. In this unit, we're going to be talking about angle relationships and mainly just a bunch of angles, really. This very first lesson, we're going to be looking at what are called vertical angles, linear pairs, and basically some other angle information that you're going to need to learn here. So, the lesson objectives are to understand these terms: complementary angles, supplementary angles, and adjacent angles. And then after that, we're going to be able to identify and solve problems with vertical angles and linear pairs. So we're just going to jump right into some definitions real quick. So first things first is adjacent angles. Adjacent just means next to. So when we're talking about adjacent angles, we're talking about angles like X and Y here. These angles are right next to each other. X and 72 are right next to each other. 72 and Z. This Z angle and this 90-degree angle, and then also the 90-degree angle and the angle Y here, the right angle. Adjacent just means angles that are right next to each other. Complementary. Complementary means that they add to 90 degrees. So angles that add to 90 degrees would be like angle Z and 72. So because this is a straight line, this line right through here, straight lines have an angle measure of 180 degrees. Because this angle right here is 90 degrees, we know that these two angles right here have to add to 90 because 90 plus 90 is 180. So because 72 and Z add to 90, that means that these are complementary angles because they add to 90. Supplementary angles add to 180 degrees. So if we're looking at this diagram here, X and Y, these are adjacent angles, but they're also supplementary angles because together they would form this straight line. So these angles have to add to 180. Same thing with X and 72. These angles would have to add to 180 degrees because they help form this straight line. These two angles together form this straight line. We could also think of supplementary would be this straight line here would also be 72 plus Z plus the 90 degrees because all three of these angles together should add up to 180 because this is a straight line as well. Okay, I know this might be a lot to take in, so if you need to rewind and watch it, you can. We're going to move on to what vertical angle or linear pair is. So a linear pair is kind of similar to supplementary, where we're looking at adjacent angles that are supplementary. So that's the difference with the linear pair is that we need them to be adjacent angles that are supplementary. So here, X and Y are a linear pair because they form this line and they would add up to 180 degrees. And X and 72 would be a linear pair because they're adjacent angles and they add up to 180 because they help form this straight line here. So linear pairs form a straight line, they add to 180 degrees. So if we know this angle is 72, that means we can know that X should just be 108 because X plus 72 should equal 180. So if X is 108, 108 plus 72 equals 180. Now, if X is 108, we should know that whatever X and Y added together should add up to 180 as well because they form a straight line. So X plus Y also equals 180 degrees. We know that X is 108, so I can substitute that in here. So I have 108 plus Y equals 180. So that means that Y has to be 72. So you notice that Y is 72, and this angle right here is 72. This actually leads us into our next definition, which are vertical angles. So vertical angles exist whenever you have two lines. So again, a line has to have the double arrows here. So this is one line, and this is another line. Where two lines intersect, the angles on opposite sides of the intersection or cross have to be congruent or have to be exactly the same. So that's why Y has to be 72 because these are vertical angles. Now, X would be equal to these two angles added together. So we know that X is 108, right? It says 108 and 72 add up to 180. So if X is 108, we know that these two angles right here, this 90-degree angle and Z, they have to add up to 108 as well because this angle right here is a vertical angle with X. So again, so we know that X is 108, so this is 90. 108 minus 90. 108 minus 90 would tell you what Z is 18 degrees. All right, so now just a kind of quick I guess, remediate of what we just talked about, and then this video is over. So if we're trying to identify types of angles, we're trying to check the relationships between angle 1 and angle 2. Well, angle 1 and angle 2 are right next to each other, so that is, they're adjacent. Adjacent means next to. And then they form this straight, or excuse me, this is a straight line. This is a 90-degree angle. So we know that all angles together should add up to 180 on the straight line. So we know that angle 1 and angle 2 should add up to 90 degrees. If they add to 90, that means that they're complementary. All right? Vertical angles, again, vertical angles have to be on opposite sides of intersecting lines. Supplementary means that they have to add to 180, and a linear pair means that they form a straight line, which is not the case here. All right, and then we have this example here. So 1 and 2 in this diagram are across from each other where these two lines intersect. So these are examples of vertical angles. Now, this is kind of a trickier one, again, because this is a straight line. So these two angles added together have to equal 180. So that means that angle 1 is 90 degrees. Now, this line right here means that these two angles should add up to 180. So that means that angle 2 has to be 90 degrees as well. So both angle 1 and angle 2 are both 90 degrees. And again, because they're vertical angles, they have to be exactly the same. So that's why both of them do have to be 90 here. So if angle 1 is 90 degrees and angle 2 is 90 degrees, 90 plus 90 is 180. So that means that these angles are also supplementary. So this one is requires a little bit of thinking. So if you need to rewatch this, that may be a good idea. Last example here before we take a little break is with angle 1 and angle 2. These are adjacent because these angles are right next to each other. These angles form this straight line here. So this is a straight line. So if we add these two angles together, they kind of form that straight line. So these angles should add up to 180 degrees, meaning that they're supplementary. Excuse me. They're supplementary, and because they form a line, they're a linear pair. All right, so hopefully you should be able to complete first, I think, 6 or 7 problems on the assignment based off of this.